Guys, my name is Phoebe. Today I'm gonna talk about documentations, how to find and read a documentation. I know this is not the most exciting topic to talk about, but learning to find and navigating through documentations is critical, especially for new developers. As a new developer, we have to learn a lot of things by ourselves. So if we don't know how to read a documentation properly, we're gonna waste a lot of time, and most of the time it is very confusing and overwhelming to read the documentations. So in this video I'm gonna share with you some of the documentation that I usually go to look for solutions, and in order to make it easy for you to understand my reading strategy, I will use my current projects that I have a problem that, and then I need to go through and find a documentation related to the library that I use, and how to find a solution in that documentation. So yeah, let's get started. These are the documentations that I use to show you how to navigate through our documentations. These are some of the examples. For example, this one is from Tailwind, and this is from Python. This one is from Monaco editor. So the first thing when you come to documentation, you should try to know your documentation. By that I mean we should look for the menu, try to see how the page is structured and how the items are organized. The next thing is try to make sure you are reading the correct versions. Here for the Python documentations, I am using this version of Python, so I reading this version because most of the time the page will show you the latest and the most stable versions that they are that they have, but the version that you install might not be the latest version. So just to make sure you are reading the correct version documentation for your projects, check this section. Thirdly, you should check for tutorials or Quickstart. So in this area, usually you can build a small application following the tutorials, and by doing that you will know briefly what is the framework is about, how to use the functions to do simple things, and from there you will have the idea how to search for the solutions. And finally, you should use the search bar to find the problem that you try to deal with. For example, I have a problem with the layout of the web page. So it's something related to Flexbox. Then I just type here, and I see there's something coming up. So I just have to have a look on that right here. Right. In order to help you learn how to read a not so friendly documentation such as this Monaco documentations, I will use a real problem that I'm having in my current projects. So what is Monaco? Monaco editor is a library that helps you build a code editor for your web application. It is developed by Microsoft team, and they see their documentation in here API doc. So you can see that their documentation is organized. However, it is not very attractive, and it's not very descriptive. Like you have no idea what are these and how to look for things. It's just very simple, right? Okay, so next, what is I'm working on? So at the moment, I'm working on Query Cafe with a team. So Query Cafe is a data analytic tool that helps you run SQL queries directly on the web browsers. You can import your data from any source that we integrated in the product, and from that and then you run the SQL queries on the data. After that, you can visualize the data with the built-in chart. So yeah, if you have time, check the product and tell me how you think and tell me what should we improve on the product. And so what is the problem, right? So the problem is in the import from website. I want to import data from a website, so I need to send a GET request to the website, and I need to send headers and the body, right, for the request. So previously, this code editor box in the headers is this big. It was this big. So it's not very convenient if you have so many things to read in the box. What I need to fix is I need to build a expand icon, and then whenever I click to the icon, there is a dialog of code editors, and whatever and whenever I type in the bigger dialog or even in the smaller dialog, they talk to each other, which means I can see the same value in either way. So here I can type something here, 1, 2, 3. I expect to see the same value in the bigger dialog here. So this is the result that I achieved. So in order to make this expected solution in the expected result happen, how did I do that? So firstly, you need to know what is the problem, and in order to know the problem and whether you should go to the documentation or not, there are two things you need to be clear. Firstly, if you are looking for a source of solution that is feature oriented, which means you try to build a features. For example, in my case, I try to build a dialog having a code editor, and that code editor is talking to the smaller code editor here. That is side of a features, right? A features. So documentation is not for that purpose. Documentation is more for technical solution, for something really specific. For example, you want to know what method to build the code editor in Monaco library. That is when you should go to the documentation. But if you want to know how can I build a dialog, and that dialog has the code editor, that is more of a features oriented problem. You have to solve that problem first before you go to the documentations. So that's the first thing. And luckily, I know I already built the component for the dialog, and then I know how to use a create method from Monaco library to build the code editors. So the problem that I really need to go to the documentation is that to look for the method that I can somehow update the value that is having here into the smaller code editors. So in order to do that, the next step is try to remember the keywords. So the keywords for the problem is values or update values. And in that, there are two ways to find a solution. Firstly, you go to the main homepage and try to find if there's any method directly related to value. So I can see here that there's no solution at all. So I go deeper a little bit. I know that the method is inside this section called monaco.editor. So I click here and I browse then this is just too much, right? You got so lost here. Don't worry. Usually in this case, what you really need to look for is the section for functions, events, or methods, or some kind of like similar words. So in here they have functions and events. So here in the functions, you see that you have the create function, which means that you are in the correct place. So try to look again to see if you have any functions or anything related to value. So there's a few solutions come up here, and you see here by experience you will know that these are not the solution that you want. So the next thinking is that you need to check the value, the output of the last functions in your code. So come back to my code here. In the code field dialog, the last thing that this function, the components, the last function in the component is that is the create of the code editors, and then this function, the get values, is the last function, right? It's a last function in the component. It get the value returned from the create method, which means we need to find what type of output that this create method returns, and hopefully there are some functions that are displayed near the result to kind of like show you that for that type of output, these are the functions that you should use, right? So I will follow that way. So when I click to the create method, you see there is, and then you find the method, right? So what next? So there are a few things to look for. Firstly, what are the parameters? What should you feed the functions? So these are the things that you need to feed the function, or the syntax that you need to follow. And next is what are the output? So try to find something like output or return. So here is something here. So it returns this type of output. So you click here and see what next. So you get here and check here, and then this one is a result. So and then you go further down and see methods. So what type of method that create that related to this? So again, you know that you need something to have you to handle the values. So you know that at the moment we are in the section of the output. We know that the create method returns this type of output, and these are the events and methods that we can use to interact with the output. So we try to use a Control F, then see anything related to values. So I can see here there are two methods. The first one is a get values, and next is a set value. So you can guess from the name that get value already used in the component, which means we try to get the value, whatever value in the code editor, right? Which means set values is most likely the function that we need to use to solve the problem. So we click to there, and then we see that this one, so the syntax is very simple. You just need to set value and then the new value, and so in the description, so you see that set the value of the current model, which means that is exactly what we want, right? And then return is just a void, which means there's nothing left. There's no output that we need to handle or to taken care of. So let's try this one. So luckily, so I already tried and then it actually worked. So here you can see that previously in the parents component, I use the state called code fields here. This one store the value of the code field. This one the value. So I need to somehow use the set value in here. In this, use the set value to update the new data, the new value inside the state. And then get that value updated in the smaller code editor, because previously I managed to get the value from the smaller code editor inside to get into the bigger. Now I need to do the other way around using the set value method. So here, this is the code that I use and it actually works. So this means that whenever the code field changes, this means that whatever I type in the bigger code editors, the value of this state code field changes, it will have to run the set value to update the values of the smaller code editor to make sure that in both editors they shows the same values. So this is how I solve the problems.